This needs to be a level playing field, highly competitive. We need to compete because that's how you get the best capability and the best product. The flip side of that is we also need to collaborate because the appetite for this kind of technology is huge just within the Air Force, just within AETC. It's huge. And no one company can satisfy that appetite. So I think it would be beneficial for the Air Force to encourage, if not force, vendors to collaborate and work together for the quote unquote greater good. And we're happy to do that.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to another episode of DIB Innovators. Today I'm speaking with Scott Schneider, CEO and co-founder at HTX Labs. Scott, thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you, Dave. I know we've been trying to get on the books for quite a while, so happy to be here and share our story.
Yeah, and it's a great story. And I love for those who don't know, VR, AR company, I've had quite a few guests on in that realm. So this is super fun and you guys are doing great things. So look forward to it. To start off with, how did what's your journey? How did you find yourself, throughout the different stages of your professional career to find yourself co-founding this company and being the CEO?
Sure. Yeah, it has been a journey of a little over 40 years. Surprisingly, I've been at it that long, but started out actually working on top secret government programs for Texas Instruments, went to work for an FFRDC in Washington, D.C., and kind of doing AI before AI was really a thing and was really cool back in the day. Spent a lot of time in corporate America, but roughly 2000, when everyone was joining startups, I did the same thing and caught the startup bug. This is our third startup and arguably our most interesting, most compelling use case. And I think we can have a significant impact on the warfighter. But that's not how we started. We weren't really trying to take a poorly funded startup and go up against the U.S. government because that usually turns out poorly. But here we are, and I think we're having an impact on the warfighter.
Absolutely. And what were your other two startups, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, I spent 25 years in oil and gas. Kind of subsurface, upstream energy, doing application integration of lots of subsurface data. Worked for Halliburton, Landmark Graphics, Schlumberger, some of the big companies, and that was our first startup actually in 2003. We kind of went and did that ourselves and sold that company in 2012 to a large oil and gas data company. Had a good time. Went back to corporate America for my 3-year contract, and that was enough. And jumped, on the day of my 3rd-year anniversary at that company. Great company, but I just, it was oil and water. And so we jumped back into the startup business, kind of rebooted that company. But then this opportunity came along in summer of 2016. And we knew there was something here that we had to really go after. So that's what we've been doing for the past 8 or 9 years.
So what was the initial vision behind HTX Labs? Like, how did this come to fruition? What did you see in the market?
Yeah. Again, it had nothing to do with what we're doing or who we're doing it for. But this technology of, extended reality, AR, VR, mixed reality is an amazing technology, but it's spent a lot of time in the consumer space. 15-year-old kids playing video games in their parents' basement. Great. But can we take that into the enterprise? We're longtime enterprise software guys. And we figured, can we take this headset, this immersive experience into a MasterCard or an ExxonMobil or a large enterprise and have it make sense? Because it's not a printer, it's not a server, it's not a laptop, it's this thing called a headset. So we saw an opportunity to do that. What we started doing was, of all things, active shooter preparedness training, because we were approached by a company who wanted us to invest and build a prototype active shooter. This was 2016, right after the Pulse nightclub event. We went to a corporate security conference in Orlando right after that, top of mind. We were not like anybody else. We were doing something very different. And we got a lot of traction initially, but it's not a business. Doing active shooter training in virtual reality is not a business. It might be interesting, but we did that for probably 18 months, tried to figure out corporate America, were they really going to commit and invest in an immersive training program, not just to impress their board of directors or look innovative or attract talent, but really do it for the right reason. And we discovered after about 18 months that was not the case. And we bumped into the U.S. Air Force.
And that's what brought you then to the intersection of this technology and defense.
Yep. We were working out of an accelerator in Houston. Lieutenant Colonel Eric Fram, who's now retired from the Air Force, he was with DIU and AFWorks. He visited the accelerator. Somebody pointed him to us. We had oil and gas stuff. We had active shooter stuff, but we had a platform which was unique, we think, and that is certainly in 2017, probably still is in 2025. And he saw the potential there, and he pulled us into the Air Force into pilot training next. And that was the beginning of our journey of really engaging the U.S. Air Force. We're trying to figure out the other services: the Army, the Navy, Coast Guard, Marines, National Guard, reserves, everything.
Right. So you're talking about, would you call, well, actually, let's have an AR, VR, XR. AR, VR, but what is XR? Is that just the blend of the two?
Well, there's augmented reality, there's virtual reality, there's mixed reality, and then extended reality is just the umbrella over all of those. So it's really AR, VR, MR kind of equals XR. But we primarily historically have focused on virtual reality because we think there's an opportunity to deliver an elevated learning experience. Certainly within the military, there's a shortage of training equipment. There's a shortage of space. There's infrastructure issues around Wi-Fi and power, things that you think you would take for granted. Not everybody can have their own virtual F-16 or their own virtual C-130 or their own virtual T-6 or physical one, but we can give them that in a headset, and they can sit on their couch in their dorm room and get reps on how to change a wheel and tire on a C-130 or do a pre-flight walk around for a F-16. And that's the beauty of this technology, we think.
Yeah. So for, those, and you kind of threw that use case, like walk me through why this is so valuable and what it kind of would entail in a military training use case. Like, and make it your favorite one. Which one have you seen that's most exciting?
Well, most exciting, I mean, the places where we've spent most of our time is with pilots and maintainers, aircraft pilots, aircraft maintainers. There's a shortage of both, and we need to elevate that competency of both. So what we do is we basically build what we call digital classrooms. So if you can see what's behind me, there's a virtual T6 on a tarmac, and we create that digital classroom, and then we bring it to life. So you can you can work with a PCL, and you can see the avionics and the fuel system and the electrical system. We have something that's pretty unique to what we do, which we call immersive academics, where I can kind of take that aircraft and turn it transparent, rip the skin off, and I can see the hydraulic system, and I can see how it reacts to the PCL going straight up or whatever. And that it's not a replacement for pilots getting into a T6 or an F-16 flying, because pilots want to fly. But if we can get them closer to being ready the first time they do their solo or their check ride, that's a beautiful thing. Same for maintainers. Again, there's a shortage of training equipment. If we can let them do reps on how to change a wheel and tire on a C-130 over and over and over again, and then they get to the C-130 physically, they nail it on the first time because they've done it 100 times virtual.
Have you found that it's changing what is being taught in the classroom by what you can do with this in the classroom? Is the whole curriculum, set evolving?
I don't think, across the board, the curriculum is not changing. What's changing is that the way we're teaching it and the medium virtually. And this is not a replacement or displacement strategy. This is really an augmentation strategy. How can we add to the value of existing training? So a lot of what we're doing is at Shepherd Air Force Base, where schoolhouse, every maintainer goes through there, and they're not redoing the curriculum. The curriculum is sound, but there's opportunities for us to inject this technology into an existing set of courseware, and it goes faster because as soon as they do their kind of sign off or whatever, they nail it on the first time, and there's no degradation in competency. So we've done some case studies that prove that out. We think it's the technology of the future. It's the way that training is going to be done, and it's the way that, frankly, the demographic that's coming into the Air Force and into corporate America expects, because they grew up with a phone in their face or a tablet in their face. They expect to learn this way, not by reading a PDF or watching a video. So we have to meet the students kind of where they are and meet their expectations on how they're going to absorb and learn the skills that they're trying to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the generation of Fortnite.
It is. It
knows how to do that. They get in the middle of it and they learn, and they're quick.
And we use the same technology that Fortnite uses. It's commercial gaming technology. It's just a serious game.
Absolutely. How do you measure? Do you have any good metrics that you use to measure this? Like how, I think that would be a great, supporter, but it cuts, a level 5 training X amount? Or have you figured out ways to package the metrics for that?
We've done some, like I said, we've done some ROI case studies, certainly at Shepherd Air Force Base with what they call Crew Chief Fundamentals, which they basically redid the Crew Chief Fundamentals course using our technology, which is called Impact, which is our platform, and found that that students got through the training roughly twice as fast or in half the time. And there was no degradation in competency. Usually, I think it was about a 7% uptick, but they were just trying to figure out, can we go faster? Because the problem is the pipeline. We've got to get more students through the training pipeline and into the operational units as quickly as possible. So there's metrics out there. There's lots of case studies in the private sector and commercially. And we continue to try to do those because the results the proof is in the data. We need to capture the data. We capture a lot of data. It's kind of assessing that data and figuring out how to interpret it.
Absolutely. And so you mentioned Shepherd. Talk to me about how have you gone through, funding? Startups are hard, from the initial fundraising to, or you venture backed. And then as you got into now Air Force and DoD innovative contracting awards, talk to me kind of look through that journey. I think that's a tough one for a lot of startups to navigate.
It is. And you think you've gotten through it and you realize you're still in it. So we are not venture backed. We've never taken on outside capital, venture capital. So we bootstrapped it from our previous startups. And that's been both hugely rewarding and incredibly challenging and terrifying at the same time. Especially when, like you say, you're going up against the US government and those contracts, they don't always come when you think they're going to come. We're under a continuing resolution right now. So everything kind of slows down. And so you've got to kind of pace yourself, not get out of your skis. But it takes, for us, it was two things. We got lucky. We bumped into Colonel Fram and he made a difference because he saw something. And that's important. You've got to figure out if you've got a capability that's in the commercial sector and you think it's relevant, it may be, it may not be, but you've got to figure that out really darn quick so you don't waste your time trying to, put a square peg in a round hole. The other thing is the SBIR. Small Business Innovation Research Grants is a enormous opportunity for small businesses to get their foot in the door, do phase 1s and phase 2s and phase 3s, where you get non-dilutive capital. So you get all the venture capital without the venture threat or whatever, or taking equity. So it's all non-dilutive capital to basically find customers, product market fit, product mission fit for your product, and get some funding along the way. So those phase 1s allow you $75,000 to a couple $100,000 to find a customer and to see if you can get that product mission fit. And then phase 2 are much bigger, where you get to really do some serious R&D and prove out the technology and see if there is a real demand. And then phase 3s and so on. But it's a journey, and there's that thing that everyone calls the valley of death, and it seems to be all around you. You think you're on one side of it, and you aren't, and you think you want to be on the other side, and it's hard to get there. It's a challenge, but we love our mission. To a person within our company, we're probably 30% veterans, and we love what we're doing for the warfighter, and really elevating that readiness and preparedness for the next eventuality.
Absolutely. And what is the milestone where you're like, okay, we've made it in the contracting world?
I know we haven't gotten there yet, but I think, and again, I think we talked about this earlier. You think the phase 2 you've made it, or the phase 3 you've made it, or you get an IDIQ or an OTA or whatever. The program of record is the holy grail, as best we can tell. Becoming a program of record, having that program office that's in the Air Force or in the Army or in the Navy, fighting for you every day, and you're a line item on the NDAA, the defense budget. That's our next mission. We've gotten the phase 1s, 2s, 3s. We have a $90 million IDIQ that was awarded across the Department of the Air Force last year, which, for those of you who don't understand, the thing that's different about commercial versus U.S. government is you need to have that contracting vehicle. If you've got the capability and the customer has the need and the money, if there's no contract vehicle, they're going to have a tough time spending their money. So having that contract vehicle that we have, the $99 million IDIQ, allows them to drop money onto that and for us basically to buy our stuff. But the program of record is the ultimate thing for a company like us, but it's also important for the Air Force or the Navy or the Army. There are silos of innovation happening all over the Air Force. But to get to that level where you have a program of record that's working day in and day out to bring this capability to the warfighter, is hypercritical.
Yeah. And so from a organizational standpoint on the Air Force, or I'd say anyone on the DoD side, how do they get there? Would this be, the training shop, they would become the program executive officer for this? Or how do you envision to bring this capability to bear for the warfighter and the folks in our military?
Yeah, I don't know if this will answer your question, but we've spent an inordinate amount of time working at the squadron level with tech sergeants and staff sergeants and getting buy-in, broad adoption. But that won't get you where you want to go. We're now working at the Pentagon level, on Capitol Hill, and working at the headquarters level and the general officer level. That's where the decisions and that's where the commitment has to happen. And we've got to kind of work from the top down and the bottom up and kind of squish that quote unquote frozen middle that exists in any organization. That's what we're trying to do right now. And we brought on some experienced retired Air Force general officers who really understand the Air Force in particular as a customer, and hopefully going to help us navigate that.
Is, because this is a capability set that seems like it spans, you're talking about training for Air Force right now, aviation, but it obviously spans across the board. Many other training. They don't have like an AR, VR program office or anything like that. Or is it buried somewhere that's who you're primarily with?
There is a program office within the Air Force called the Integrated Technology Platform, which, having the word integrated, you would think there would be many vendors in there, but there's one vendor in there. And that's not what the Air Force needs. This needs to be a level playing field, highly competitive. We need to compete because that's how you get the best capability and the best product. The flip side of that is we also need to collaborate, because the appetite for this kind of technology is huge just within the Air Force, just within AETC. It's huge. And no one company can satisfy that appetite. So I think it would be beneficial for the Air Force to encourage, if not force, vendors to collaborate and work together for the quote unquote greater good. And we're happy to do that. But you're right. This technology can be used for absolutely anything, which is both a blessing and a curse, because you can get distracted with lots of shiny objects where there's just no return on investment. It would be cool, but again, we gravitated towards aircraft and aviation because we got started out in pilot training next and then maintenance training next. There's just a big demand, and we're frankly, as an organization, really good at building those digital classrooms behind me, and bringing them to life so that they operate I won't say a digital twin because it's a highly abused term. It's not going to fly like a T6. We're not building a flight simulator, but there's a lot of opportunity for this just within this narrow lane of kind of aviation training, both commercially and the Department of Defense as well.
Yeah, basic processes and procedures that you're doing something is so repetitive, so required, and challenging to learn from a book with a couple diagrams.
And that's where we got started in pilot training next, developing all the emergency procedures for the T6. And historically, that was done using basic chair flying, where you sat in a chair and you were posed with a fire in flight. Your engine catches fire. What do? You can talk through it, but until you actually do it, you're not going to have that muscle memory. It's not going to be burned into your brain. And that's what we did, is we built emergency procedures where we'd catch the T6 on fire, and you've got to go through the boldface in the training curriculum and do everything step by step by step by step in order to get credit for it. And that's how you develop the muscle memory.
Yeah, that is great. There are other companies doing similar tasks to you. What do you think what is your secret sauce, if you could get into it? Or why is your approach different than maybe other competitors out there?
Yeah, a great question. And we talk about this a lot, and we think about this a lot. And from day one, our plan was to build a platform. We're, again, enterprise software platform guys, so everybody needs a platform. But most people don't appreciate the platform. So if you think about Netflix versus something like Blockbuster, for those of you who are old enough to know what Blockbuster was. Blockbuster is you got to drive to the store and pick up the video. Whereas Netflix, I'm sitting on my couch at home and I'm streaming this from my couch to my tablet, to my TV, or to a headset. This has to be accessible. We have to meet students and airmen and soldiers and sailors and Marines where they are. And that's our secret sauce. Is it's a cyber secure, and don't get me started on cybersecurity and ATO, because we spend an inordinate amount of time and money achieving that. But the platform, a cloud-based platform where you can be anywhere, forward deployed, downrange, and download some training to a headset and get just-in-time training. And that hasn't historically been possible. So that's really one of our big secrets, and not just for a headset, but when we started the company, we were very purist VR people. Like, you got to have a headset, you got to have the best headset attached to a gaming computer, high fidelity, blah blah blah. That does not scale, and you're going to get to 1% of the community. And in order to get to the other 99%, it's got to be on a portable headset. It's got to be on a tablet. It's got to be on a mobile phone. It's got to be on a laptop. Same experience, but you're using your fingers as the input device, or mouse and keyboard. It's still a much better learning experience than watching a video or reading a PDF. But that's how you achieve scale, and that's how you get adoption, is by having it on any learning device. Because every airman has an e-board or a GTAC tablet. And our platform allows us to do that. We build it once, and I can deploy it to a headset or a tablet or a mobile device or a laptop. It's the same learning experience. We're not like writing it 4 times. That's what a platform gives you. And that's our biggest differentiator.
That's great. Where do you find, as you've organized your company and you're looking at, obviously there are big stages of technology increase or capability increase. I imagine this is a fairly high content development load, as you continue to build a new content. How about from the tech side? Where do you see the big initiatives internal to your company that you're driving to get to the next one, the next step, the next MVP, if you will?
You bet. Yeah. As soon as you satisfy today's need, they're looking for tomorrow's requirement, right? So I think you hit probably the biggest one on the head is content creation. Is how do you create those, the digital classrooms faster and with less less labor intensive. And so generative AI is going to be a big help in that area. And so we're looking at AI and employing that to be able to create these digital classrooms and to bring them to life. If I take a TO, a technical order, that's a pre-flight walk around, I can turn an AI loose on that, break it down into steps, and add that interaction to the T6 almost automatically. And that's where that's where we need to get to, so that it's not labor intensive, that we're doing the 20% instead of the 80% from a labor perspective. So that's probably the biggest thing, is the content creation. And then AI in general. I mean, we're talking about learning, we're talking about training. Wouldn't it be great if I had my own private instructor pilot with me wherever I go in this virtual environment, to make sure I'm actually learning, or where am I slipping up? Where did I do things in the wrong order? To have that in real time, wherever you go, it just elevates the learning experience even further. So yeah, we have an innovation arm within our company that's focused solely on things like this. And there's technology like Gaussian splats and Nerf technology that I don't really understand, but I don't need to, because we have people that understand it very well. And that's where we've got to go. We've got to keep pushing the envelope.
And so again, mostly VR classroom, but seems like there's a lot of AR capabilities. As obviously you can't do everything as a company. You got to be,
right.
Maniacally focused on a use case, a customer, and get that win. But where do you see this transforming? Where do you see HTX taking this? You get the contract, you are the provider for training. What's next in a technology and roadmap perspective?
Yeah, I think we still have plenty to tap into just in kind of the virtual reality space. But I think mixed reality, augmented reality, absolutely. The kind of the over the shoulder. I'm on the flight line on near a C-130, and I need to phone home to figure out what are the steps I need to go through. Very interesting. But I think the blending of virtual reality and augmented reality into more of a mixed reality experience, I think that's where the future is, because then you've kind of got both. And our platform fully supports that. We haven't done anything that's kind of VR specific that would preclude us from introducing augmented reality and mixed reality capabilities. That's where this is going. And I think there's, like I said, a huge opportunity for AI within this learning experience platform that will really increase the experience even better.
That's great. So going back a little bit to your customer set, the DoD has trouble adopting new technologies for a host of reasons. It can be challenging. What have you seen are the biggest hurdles to me, this seems like a no-brainer. Why is this not moving faster? What are those hurdles, both into, the defense space, and then what's your strategy to overcome them?
Yeah, I think this is still considered emerging technology. I think we're past it. Not everyone thinks we're past it, but the innovation, like I said, happens all over the place. But there's no kind of cohesive where this rolls up to somebody who's going to say, okay, program office, program a record, here's $500 million annual budget to do this across the Air Force. And until that happens, I think we're going to continue to have an impact, but not near the impact that we could if there was broader adoption and commitment from above. Again, I think we're making some headway, but it's not just us. There are companies that do exactly what we do, maybe differently. And again, I don't think there's a program office that has one vendor in it. I think there's a program office that's managed to everyone's strengths, that manages to everyone's strengths, because we do things a little differently than our competitors do. So yeah, we have a long way to go, but that's the fun part.
You think what's holding them back is, they're looking for the pursuit of perfection, finding that perfect solution, or what is that? Or is it just a matter of actually like it's an organizational block just designed?
Yeah, I think there is some of that perfection thing where it has to be absolutely perfect end game, and maybe we're not there yet. The Air Force in particular has invested quite a bit in immersive technology, but again, it's been phase 1s and 2s, and there's an end to those where there's not this big. This needs to be continual. It needs to be, once you get to that phase 3 or that IDIQ, there has to be a long-term funding commitment to it. And that's, as you said, the government and the Department of Defense has a tough time. They like to buy weapon systems. I'll buy an F-35 every other day. But what we have is software, and you generally want to have that offered as a subscription. So there's a long-term commitment on our part and the customer's part. And the government doesn't lease or buy software very well. And that's been a challenge, just getting that long-term commitment so that we can feel comfortable that there is a long-term commitment and we can be ready for the long haul, because we don't want to get distracted with something else. We believe there's something here, and the Department of Defense is generally a really good customer and a huge level of commitment to readiness and preparedness. And we think we're a part of that, or this technology is a part of that. We're just trying to get those two to line up.
How much have you brought in? You look at things that motivate people, it's winning, it's gamifying. Mm-hmm. And then do you have the ability to bring in, so for example, I'm running a maintenance squadron, and folks are at home, but they've got to do a certain level, achieve a certain number of where as the parent in this organization, I can have visibility into other accounts and how we're doing. Have you scaled anything like that, or is it still kind of one-on-one opportunities?
No, we certainly, again, I'll throw the platform in there. That's what affords us the opportunity to do this. Just like Fortnite is a platform where you can collaborate, multiplayer, massively online games. The thing you're hitting on, though, is kind of the badging system. Like, warfighters are naturally competitive. They want to be the best. They want to be Top Gun or whatever. And so that badging system where you introduce this level of gamification and competitiveness, I think it's a beautiful thing, because it does drive the desire to train. And nobody traditionally wants to go to an 8-hour training class where you're sitting in a classroom just listening to somebody drone on and on about how to change a wheel and tire on a C-130. But if I can go into a headset and it's gamified and it's fun, I think we have to balance that fun with real learning. But the badging system, the ability to measure, we measure a lot of stuff that happens inside one of these experiences. Everything you touch, everything you do, how long did you take between this step and this step? And what we need to do is we need to assimilate all that data, aggregate that data, and figure out where the learning is happening and where it's not, so that we can address where it's not happening. And again, the badging, the competitiveness, I think we have to tap into that. We have the capability, we just haven't really, we're kind of crawl, walk, run a little bit.
Yeah, no,
probably like running.
Well, we have the same thing, as we deliver, security capability, security awareness training, to provide that enterprise dashboard, and then see folks, and you can see how people are doing, and they can see how people are doing. You really can change behaviors. That would be another interesting, to provide that enterprise, because a lot of times it's, here's training, people do, I did it, but not everyone needs the same amount of training. Some people are that good.
Absolutely.
So it's not waste time. So yeah, no, that platform, to your point, that's very cool. Spot on. So do you have, while you're doing this, are you looking at any simultaneously continued any commercial use cases, or have you pivoted completely into the military space?
We've pivoted pretty darn completely into the military use case. We still do some things in the commercial side. We actually work with a nonprofit called Vehicles for Change, where they are using this technology to train entry-level auto mechanics who are coming out of the prison system and are transitioning back into public life and need a skill, need a trade to support that. So we're doing some things, again, we've looked at commercial aviation, whether it's the OEMs or whether it's airlines. We've got some good contacts there, but we keep coming back to the demand is here within the military. Whether the commitment is there long term still remains to be seen, but there's budget for this kind of capability within the military to again produce that ready, prepared warfighter. And I don't think that sense of urgency and commitment exists as much as it does in the military on the commercial side. There's pockets of it, I'm sure. But we started out looking at oil and gas. If you think about a brand new offshore rigger who's going out to an offshore rig for the very first time, it's chaos and incredibly dangerous. But I can create a virtual offshore platform and let them practice so they know what they're getting themselves into. It's a perfect use case.
And how do you ensure, your solution, because a lot of this, you have access to sensitive data, how do you make sure it's secure? How do you make sure you're still innovating with sometimes what people would say security roadblocks, makes it harder because, things are locked down. How do you look at that whole, the sensitive nature of what you're doing and how to still drive innovation and quick scaling, opportunities within your company?
Yeah, it's a huge challenge. And, one of the biggest challenges is cybersecurity within the Department of Defense and ATOs and authority to operate. It's probably one of the things that makes us consider going back to the private sector because it's just a less stringent environment. I don't want to minimize the need for cybersecurity, but there's a balance. If we're not careful as a force, as a military, if we're not careful, we're never going to deploy another piece of capability because the constant cybersecurity ATO and the goalpost keeps moving. Like, now you got to do this, now you got to do this. And we've achieved impact level 4, FCL and things like that. It's challenging for a small company, and there's an opportunity cost of spending time and money on that and not on innovating and trying to grow our team enough so that we can take care of both is a constant and daily challenge. And again, I don't want to minimize the need for cybersecurity and ATOs, but it's like we're kind of building the plane while we're flying it. And it's sometimes really scary.
I can understand it. That's a common theme,
Yeah, I'm sure you've heard it before.
Well, you've been a multiple time founder. You're in the defense space. What advice would you give to, I'd say folks that want to build solutions, meet some needs in the defense industrial base, as you've learned these lessons, in blood over the last 40 years, as you said, what would you provide as recommendation or advice?
Network. And I'm not a huge networking guy. Like, I don't want to go to networking, but you've got to find, unless you're former military, if you're retired, you're transitioning out of the military, and you've got that experience and that Rolodex, it's hard to get engaged. Again, we got lucky. And if it weren't for Colonel Fram finding us, we probably wouldn't be doing this. So I think getting lucky, finding a customer, but that SBIR thing is, I think, a huge, it's a funding source, and it lowers your blood pressure a little bit because you just got a contract for $200,000, which in the private sector, that's like 5 or 6 proofs of concept that might go somewhere, might not. So I think the SBIR, we call it the SBIR train. You want to get on, but you also want to get off at some point and transition, get across that valley of death to where you've actually transitioned and fielded the capability. But it's a lot of work, but it's also, in my 40 years of doing this work thing, is the most rewarding experience I've had, period. And I think a lot of our employees would say the same thing. We have a set of values that we try to live, and one of them is all in. And we are all in on this mission because it's a small part of a big mission, but it's an important part, we think, and we're lucky to have the opportunity to do this.
Yes. Keep going, never quit. Yeah, having a mission that matters, I think, and people are close to, and you can see the potential to change the capability set of, our warfighters is pretty powerful.
It is. It's what gets us out of bed every day and keep pushing forward.
Perfect. So ideally, path 5 years nominally, where do you see, developments, partnerships? Where is HTX going? What's the vision for you guys?
Yeah, that's a question I think about all day, every day, because that's my job. And I think, are we part of a larger organization? Have we, we're looking at some M&A opportunities where we might acquire and grow, inorganically. To date, we've grown very organically, hiring talent. But I think there's an opportunity to go faster and to look at acquisitions. There's again an unending appetite for this capability, and from a technology perspective and from an impact perspective, I think we just need to go faster, and I want to go faster. I don't have a lot of patience. That's why we're in the startup business. And every day is an opportunity to do good, and it's also an opportunity to fall behind, and we cannot afford to do that. It's too important. So I don't have a really good crystal ball about where we're going to be in 5 years, but I feel like we built a solid business. We're fiscally responsible. We don't get out over our skis, but we're always pushing the envelope because that's what's demanded.
Yeah, it's interesting. That first mover advantage doesn't always win, but boy, it can make a difference.
but you got to keep it.
And that's right.
It's hard to get and hard to keep.
Absolutely. Well, this has been awesome, Scott. Unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap it up for today, but you guys are doing cool things. I know on your website, you've got some cool videos. How best for people to follow you, follow what's going on?
Yeah, htxlabs.com. Easy to find us. Email me, scott@htxlabs.com. I'm on LinkedIn. Happy to talk. I enjoy opportunities to talk about our journey and the good, the bad, and the ugly of it. And if I can impart some of that experience on those who are just getting started, we're happy to do that. Again, collaboration over, competition's a thing, but we've got to collaborate for the greater good of the warfighter. So yeah, happy to talk to anybody.
Well, that's awesome. Well, really enjoyed this episode. Thank you, Scott. You've done some amazing things, and I know I see you guys out on the road all the time. So I look forward to more good news as you guys continue to figure out a way to dominate this space.
We look forward to it. I appreciate the opportunity to talk today, and I'm sure I'll see you at a future conference somewhere.
Hear it, hear. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.